My fiancé fell in love with Ivy from the welfare institution and insisted on breaking off our engagement. I tried to reason with him gently. This is the most critical time for you to compete for the inheritance. It wouldn't be too late to make a decision after it's announced. However, Ivy died accidentally while trying to save my fiancé. After he successfully became the heir, the first thing he did was to suppress my family's business until it went bankrupt. My parents sold off all our family assets and died of illness in a shabby old house. As for me, he locked me in the basement and tortured me to death. These are all the debts you owe, Ivy. I woke up again on the very day of the engagement banquet announcing the union of the two families. Facing my fiancé's pressure to step back, I smiled and said, "You should call me sister-in-law. I died in a cold, damp basement. Hiram couldn't wait to tear me limb from limb. He locked me in that cellar, torturing me endlessly. The sunless days wore away at both my mind and body. By the time death came, I hadn't eaten for 3 days. Not an inch of my skin remained unbroken, and I lacked even the strength to lift my head. Knowing my limits had been reached, I still asked resentfully, 'Why are you doing this to me?' I couldn't understand. Our families had been friends for generations, always maintaining harmonious relations. Even when his family fell into desperate straits, isolated and helpless, my father's generation never considered severing ties with them. We gave everything we had to help them through their difficulties, stabilizing both their social standing and assets. Yet within just 5 years of becoming heir, he drove my family into bankruptcy and ultimately to complete ruin. Hiram, why are you treating me like this? I raised my eyes and stared at him intently. He looked down at me coldly, his voice devoid of emotion as he spoke word by word, "This is what you all owe, Ivy." Ivy? A name so distant that it took me a long time to search through my memories before I recalled what that face looked like. 5 years have passed, and he's still holding a grudge against me for obstructing him back then. In the end, he never let it go, blaming Ivy's death on me, and even my entire family. I slowly closed my eyes, refusing to look at him any longer. One more glance would only pollute my vision. Hiram, you're such an utter fool. I sneered inwardly, feeling my eyelids grow heavier until they never opened again. Even after death, before my soul had dispersed, I still heard Hiram's indifferent voice, "To die without pain, what a mercy for you." When I opened my eyes again, I saw the dazzling chandelier in the grand hall and heard the clamor of voices inside. I had returned to the day the two families announced their alliance through marriage. Heaven had eyes, it couldn't bear to let me die in such obscurity and gave me another chance. This time, I'll see just how unshakable your so-called love really is. Sis, are you feeling unwell? My sister Giselle whispered as she held my arm. She must be feeling unwell. A mocking voice came from behind. I heard Hiram was kicked out by his father yesterday for insisting on breaking off his engagement with Layla. He stood outside their door for a whole day and night, and yesterday's downpour was particularly heavy. Giselle immediately turned to argue, but I stopped her. It wasn't just about breaking off the engagement with me. That year, while Hiram was out, he was targeted by a rival who hired an assassin to kill him. Just as the car was about to hit him, he was saved by Ivy, who happened to be passing by. In the process of saving him, she accidentally lost both her legs. Ivy lived in a nearby orphanage, known for her kindness, gentleness, and stunning beauty. Deeply moved, Hiram vowed to take full responsibility for her. Once he confirmed his safety, he immediately contacted his family and brought Ivy back with him. Counting yesterday, it had been 3 or 4 days since he started arguing with his father. He claimed that during his time with Ivy, he finally understood what love truly meant and insisted on marrying her. Sis, don't listen to all the gossip outside. You and Hiram were betrothed even before you were born, and you grew up together. Your bond. I reached up to touch Giselle, who was holding my arm, and shook my head at her. Let's not talk about that now. Where's the food? I feel like I'm starving to death. The sensation of hunger-induced weakness from my past life seemed to linger in my body. Without stopping, I found where the food was set up, sat down, and began eating while trying to make sense of everything from my past and present lives. As expected, mental exertion really drains one's physical energy. While I was still lost in thought, murmurs began spreading through the crowd. Looking up, I saw Hiram in a custom-tailored suit. Pushing Ivy, who wore a pure white dress and sat in a wheelchair, he walked straight toward me. Wherever they passed, whispers followed, along with curious gazes eager for drama. Hiram and I had been betrothed since we were in our mother's wombs. Since childhood, both families intentionally arranged for us to spend time together. At school, if anyone bullied or mocked me, he was the first to stand up for me. When he made mistakes and faced punishment, I was the first to plead for leniency on his behalf. Until now, no one had ever doubted the bond between Hiram and me. Our marriage was something everyone took for granted and considered inevitable. I was the only one ever deemed suitable to marry Hiram. But today, on such an important occasion for both families, he showed up with another woman. Ivy sat in a wheelchair with a cashmere blanket, thoughtfully prepared by Hiram, draped over her knees. Her uneasy gaze, like that of a startled rabbit, allowed Hiram to push the wheelchair from behind. The moment she faced me, her expression was flustered and bewildered. It really was, exactly the same scene as in my previous life, overlapping without a single difference. Even the slight redness in her eyes and the timing of the tears welling up were so precisely executed. I was deceived by this pitiful appearance. I was well aware that marriages among aristocratic families were often based on the principle of 1 + 1 being greater than 2, and I never held any illusions about so-called love. Her arrival did indeed stir a mix of conflicting emotions in me at that moment. But 2 decades of upbringing and etiquette would not allow me to lose my composure now. When Hiram wanted to break off the engagement, I didn't cry or protest, refusing to accept it. Just out of the affection that comes from growing up together, I sincerely advised him a few words: "You're currently in the intense stage of competing for the position of heir. Your father is watching your every move. Ivy has no one to rely on, even though she paid a price for saving your life. But this marriage between families of unequal status will also face public pressure from all sides, and it would be extremely difficult for Ivy to establish herself in your family. It's not too late to make a decision after everything is settled. The friendship between our families will remain unchanged. To be honest, I've hinted quite clearly, in the future, won't it still be up to the one in charge to decide?" Just these few words shielded her from disaster, but ended up drawing fire onto myself and implicating my entire family. Ivy, looking as harmless as a little white rabbit, watched me with reddened eyes and tearful gaze. She wanted to speak but didn't dare, shifting her gaze between me and Hiram, ultimately remaining silent. I remained unfazed, continuing to eat the food on my plate. Giselle arrived shortly after, tugging at the hem of my dress. Everyone attending tonight's banquet was a prominent figure from various circles in this city. Now the entire crowd was watching our direction, with hushed whispers never ceasing. Unmoved, I still leisurely savored the dessert on my plate. What's the hurry? Since she needs my help, she should act like someone who's begging. In my past life, I was too soft-hearted. That's what doomed me and my family to such a fate. I picked up my champagne glass unhurriedly, taking small sips. Suddenly, I felt curious, just how long could she keep up this act? Ivy, she was faking it. Her paralysis was fake, her pitiful demeanor was fake, even her accidental death was fake. Late at night in the garden of Hiram's backyard, I saw with my own eyes her walking upright on both legs. She tearfully begged an older, unfamiliar woman. "Aunt Clara, I'm just an orphan from the welfare home. Without using some sacrificial schemes, how could I ever climb this tall tree called Hiram? If not for guilt, why would Hiram ever keep me in his heart? Aunt Clara, I love Hiram, though I know someone like me isn't even worthy to polish his shoes. But Hiram has already promised to marry me. I must take action to speed things up. Please help me set up one more scheme, just one more life-saving favor, and Hiram will never forget me for the rest of his life, forever feeling indebted and guilty toward me." What a masterful performance! Such acting talent is truly wasted outside the theater. Deceiving Hiram, deceiving me. Fooling both our families, and every prominent household in this city that had crossed paths with us. I once asked Hiram bitterly, after all, we'd spent 20 years together. How could he fall for Ivy after just a few fleeting encounters with her? I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Everyone fawns over me, flatters me, curries favor the moment they see me. People tread carefully around me not for who I am, but for the family behind me. Layla, search your conscience, if I weren't who I am today, would you still want to marry me? His words plunged me into brief silence. My wordless response answered his question well enough. If he were nothing, then there wouldn't be any so-called engagement between us, let alone any talk of marriage. How could there be any childhood friendship or bond from growing up together? Only Ivy, when she didn't know my identity, came to save me without hesitation, even at the cost of losing her legs. Yet she never resents it, remains optimistic and positive, and her heart and eyes are full of me. How could I betray such passionate love? To be honest, I'm a realist. As the eldest daughter of the family, there are many things I have to consider. I have to consider the family's reputation and my parents' standing. A single misstep in my actions might bring unnecessary trouble to the family. Indeed, I wouldn't impulsively sacrifice everything for so-called love. But we've all overlooked one thing. The car Hiram travels in, his expensive attire, all of it showcases his wealth and status. Ivy's choice to save Hiram from the very beginning was already a calculated move. She had long been determined to latch onto Hiram, this towering tree of influence. I continued to sip the champagne in my glass, watching coldly from the sidelines with no intention of speaking. Ivy knew she was the one who had meddled between Hiram and me, turning me into the subject of gossip in our social circle. Naturally, she didn't dare to confront me. She simply kept her head down and sat silently in her wheelchair. In the end, it was Hiram who broke the silence first. Layla, what do you mean by this? I'm genuinely trying to have a proper conversation with you. Is this the kind of grace your family upbringing is supposed to instill? I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Turns out when people are utterly exasperated, they inexplicably feel like laughing. Blame my youthful naivety back then, for being overly confident about the 20-plus years of friendship between us. After catching Ivy red-handed, I immediately contacted Hiram that same night and told him everything I'd seen and heard. I warned him to keep an eye on Ivy and not lose big for small gains. Yet the very next day, Ivy was dead. Truly dead. Word has it that while visiting the orphanage with Hiram, a sudden fire broke out there. In the final moments, Ivy pushed Hiram out of the flames, only to perish in the inferno. By the time firefighters arrived, everything had been reduced to charred remains. The official investigation concluded it was caused by aging wiring in the orphanage combined with dry weather conditions. After Hiram returned, everything went back to normal as if nothing had happened. I thought he had come to his senses and taken my earnest advice to heart. It wasn't until my dying breath that I realized he had always resented and blamed me for it. Layla, are you deaf or dumb? Ivy did nothing wrong, I'm the one who wants to break off our engagement. She paid a terrible price to save me, and I can't shirk my responsibility toward her. Both families' elders are here today. Just nod, and we'll consider the matter settled. Slowly setting down my wine glass, I let out a cold laugh. Fine. Taking Giselle's hand, I stood up. Giselle, let's go. Uncle Clarendon is with Dad, right? We'll go find him. Then she glanced at Ivy, who had remained silent the whole time. Don't let Hiram delay his performance here. Layla, you. Hiram was about to lose his temper when Ivy stopped him. Giselle and I found my father on the second floor of the banquet hall, talking with Uncle Clarendon. Recently, my father successfully secured the East District project, with projected profits exceeding $100 billion. This was all thanks to my visionary father and capable older brother. Everyone wanted a piece of the pie, and the Clarendon family was no exception. Therefore, the original intention was to use the marriage alliance as an opportunity to deepen the relationship between the two families and achieve comprehensive cooperation. Hiram's actions likely planted seeds of discord in my father and brother's hearts toward the Clarendon family. Hiram still chased after me, incessantly spouting so-called romantic nonsense. Layla, don't think you can act recklessly just because you're the heiress of the Pembroke family. The relationship between our families still exists, let's part amicably and meet again in the future. Yes, just as I am the family heiress. From the moment we're born, the path we must walk and the life we must lead are already predetermined for scions of noble families. There can be no variables. Hiram has lived too comfortably these past 20 years. He simply doesn't realize what the position of matriarch of the Clarendon family truly means for the family. Perhaps Hiram's voice was too loud, drawing the attention of my father's side. Hiram's father smiled as he stepped forward. Time flies so fast. Layla has grown into such a fine young woman now. My father chimed in with a smile. Indeed, in the blink of an eye, our children are all ready to start families and careers. He pointed at Hiram. You boy, you'd better treat my daughter well, or else. I interrupted. Dad, Uncle Clarendon, I'm afraid today's engagement party might need to change protagonists. Hiram and Ivy share a bond forged through adversity. I genuinely envy them. My presence might have been an intrusion on their love, which is stronger than gold, and I'd likely face public scorn for it. So, I ask Uncle Clarendon and Father to bear witness today and annul my engagement with Hiram. For their union, I offer my heartfelt blessings. May they be forever joined in love and grow old together. The crowd instantly erupted into an uproar, with guests whispering among themselves. By the next day, the news spread throughout City A's headlines. The centuries-old friendship between the Clarendon and Pembroke families was on the verge of collapse, with their arranged marriage seemingly called off. The news of the Clarendon family's young master proposing to marry an orphan girl from the Welfare Institute went viral. It was said that Uncle Clarendon was so furious he immediately scolded Hiram, "This is nonsense," and even struck him twice with his walking cane. My father was also nearly driven mad with anger, pointing at me with widened eyes. Nullify the engagement? Huh? How could you even say such a thing? The arrangement was made by parental authority and matchmaker's words. Is this something you alone can decide? Do you think this is some child's play? I sat bolt upright, remaining completely silent. That marriage arrangement made by our parents personally, do you think you can just cancel it on a whim? Tomorrow you'll go to the Hiram residence to apologize in person, say it was a momentary impulse, an emotional outburst. I won't go. You won't go? Then what do you intend to do? My engagement with Hiram is hereby cancelled. Cancel it? Do you even realize the Hiram family's influence runs deep for 3 generations? Though our families are close, do you think even our family can afford to offend them? I muttered under my breath, maybe we can afford to. You. Father slammed his cup down and stormed out. You've lost your mind. I had indeed lost my mind. If not for the experiences of my past life, I would never have dared to defy my elders like this. Since childhood, I'd been taught to follow rules and behave with propriety. Openly annulling an engagement on my own initiative was something I would never have dared to do in the past. But what good did following the rules ever do me? All it brought me was the ruin of my family. Our family's century-old foundation, built from venturing into business, had never overstepped its bounds. Our ancestors shared a life-and-death bond with the Clarendon family. Generations of effort and absolute trust in each other led to the flourishing of both families. So in my past life, when Uncle Clarendon made the slightest hint, my father didn't hesitate to share the profits. When the Clarendon family faced difficulties, we went all out to help, offering timely assistance. Yet Hiram caught us completely off guard. The truth proved that blind trust sometimes leads to a swifter death. Big sis, did Hiram come talk to you later? Giselle lay sprawled on my bed flipping idly through a book. I opened my phone and found our chat window. The latest message contained just 4 words, know your limits. I blocked and deleted Hiram's contact in one swift motion, out of sight, out of mind. Mere seconds later, my phone lit up with a new notification, making my heart leap with hope. I then pulled a figure-hugging dress from the closet, applied flawless makeup, grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Giselle immediately sat up in bed, startled. Sis, where are you going so late? And dressed like that? I picked up a random perfume bottle from the dressing table and answered casually, the bar. The bar? Are you crazy? What are you going to the bar for? If Dad finds out, you'll get the full disciplinary treatment. Giselle looked at me in disbelief. Stop asking. As long as neither of us tells, no one will know. Then I closed the door, started the car, and left. The me now is no longer the old me. The gentle and virtuous Layla is already dead. The man before me lounged carelessly on the sofa. The dazzling lights of the bar illuminated his pale face, with shadows of lingering illness tracing the contours of his brow and eyes. Yet his deep, penetrating gaze carried a faintly dangerous edge. Miss Pembroke Layla is indeed as dazzlingly beautiful as the rumors suggest. I smiled at him. Torren Clarendon lives up to his reputation. Elegantly handsome. The corners of his lips lifted in response. We both understood perfectly well these were nothing but pleasantries exchanged between strangers. I received the congratulatory gifts you sent a few days ago. That was thoughtful of you, and I really liked them. He poured tea into the cups on the table, placing one before me. Your reciprocal gift has also reached me. I picked up the teacup in front of me, gesturing for him to clink cups with me before draining it in one go. With empty cups and finished tea, we exchanged smiles. His name was Torren, the eldest son of the Clarendon family and Hiram's half-brother. Father was right, aristocratic families place greater emphasis on social status. Once words are given, how could they be changed so easily? Moreover, this marriage contract between our families was personally arranged by the older generation. It's not something that can simply be annulled. But I knew perfectly well, there was absolutely no way I would ever marry Hiram. In the quiet nights since my rebirth, I often searched through my fading memories, trying to recall if such a person had ever appeared before. Someone with good status, high position, and most importantly, someone who could actually have a say in the Clarendon family. He was the eldest son of the Clarendon family, technically the true first in line. My marriage arrangement should have been with him. But his birth mother passed away from illness when he was young. He inherited his mother's frail constitution, frequently plagued by sickness and pain. Perhaps they feared my father would object due to his health condition, so the engagement was transferred to Hiram instead. In my previous life, he never showed interest in competing with Hiram for the heir position, content with his own small domain. Yet he clearly had ambitions too. The enterprises under his name were originally insignificant peripheral businesses of the Clarendon Group. In just 2 or 3 years, it developed into an entity that could almost rival the core business of the Clarendon Group. The projects he handled were immensely profitable, and at a young age, he was already listed on the Forbes rankings. When the Clarendon Group was on the verge of collapse, it was he who turned the tide and stabilized its foundation. If he hadn't voluntarily given up his position as the heir, Hiram would never have been able to take that seat. What advice do you have for me by inviting me out this time? Without beating around the bush, I got straight to the point, marry me. All right. Torren agreed readily. Talking with smart people really saves brainpower. But whether this marriage can actually happen depends on your capabilities. Torren smiled, the teardrop mole at the corner of his eye making him look particularly enchanting under the lights. He then raised his teacup towards me, cheers to our mutual efforts. Ever since that banquet fiasco ended, Sidier had remained unusually quiet. The rumors circulated for a few days before collapsing on their own. How could the marriage alliance between our two families possibly be cancelled? The marriage alliance between our two families is a done deal. At this critical juncture, who would dare to propose to my family without the Clarendon family's approval? Hiram didn't seem to care. Uncle Clarendon hadn't given him a kind look this entire time. He simply took Ivy abroad for travels everywhere, calling it, "The world is vast, and I want to show it to you." It was also a way to make up for Ivy's mobility limitations in a wheelchair. Being out of the country, he naturally wouldn't notice how frequent the business transactions between companies had become in just a month, or how rapidly the stock market was fluctuating. Or perhaps, even if he were in the country, he wouldn't have cared. The Clarendon Group's financial strength was now so robust that there was no chance of a capital chain shortage. Even if the capital chain were to break, my family would step in to help. Naturally, he remained unaware of the subtle personnel changes occurring within the companies under his name. After all, they were just some grassroots employees, hardly significant. Ever since their meeting at the bar, to avoid drawing suspicion, she maintained frequent communication with Torren via messages. Within just 2 days, the story of the wealthy young master being saved by a poor orphan girl and defying his family to pledge his love to her made headlines. Someone leaked the video of Hiram standing up for Ivy at the banquet that night. Many netizens began spinning their own versions of a fairy tale romance between a Prince Charming and a Cinderella. Most netizens voted in support. They approved of Hiram pursuing so-called true love. Doesn't saving someone's life at the risk of one's own deserve reciprocation? What's wrong with loving someone? If one can't even shoulder the most basic responsibilities, how can they be called a real man? Is this just blatant discrimination of the rich against the poor? As public opinion continues to escalate, what started as entertainment gossip has turned into a full-blown social controversy. Meanwhile, Hiram and Ivy have been photographed by passers-by multiple times appearing together in public, behaving intimately. This has drawn numerous well-wishes and support from both bystanders and netizens. For several consecutive days, they've been dominating trending topics. It's safe to say their travel itinerary has been thoroughly exposed by netizens. Clarendon Group's stock price has shown significant growth these past few days. Rumors have been circulating that Ivy is the lucky star of the Clarendon family, bringing good fortune to the clan. As public opinion continued to escalate, they were finally forced to address the situation publicly. That very night, they urgently contacted Hiram, demanding his immediate return to the country. A press conference was promptly held, where they openly acknowledged the relationship between Hiram and Ivy. Thus, Hiram returned triumphantly with Ivy by his side. How intriguing. A commoner marrying into wealth has always been a hot topic. Not only did it affirm their unwavering love, but the stark contrast in their social backgrounds also created a perfect storm of controversy. When personal conflicts escalated into collective disputes, and the interests of the Clarendon Group were compromised under the weight of public opinion, they had no choice but to step forward and resolve the issue. He cut off my father's retreat and incidentally drove a wedge between Hiram and his dad, plunging their relationship to rock bottom. Never underestimate the power of public opinion. Uncle Clarendon probably never imagined this was Torren's doing. He'd only think Hiram intentionally used public pressure to force his hand. Right now, Hiram must feel even the heavens are helping him. Inside the bar's private room, how'd it go? Not bad. Is that all? I picked up the teacup and took a sip, still as unpalatable as ever. I set it down with a hint of disdain and turned toward Torren. Why not press the advantage? Torren raised an eyebrow, smiling meaningfully. Oh? Care to elaborate? I shot him an annoyed glare. Don't play dumb. Before leaving, I couldn't help but add, next time pick a quieter place, the noise is giving me a headache. And why order tea at a bar? It's awful, too. Torren reclined on the sofa, curling a faint smile. You're right, my lady. It ended with me fleeing in a fluster. In my past life, how did I not realize Torren was so flirtatious? But since I've made my decision, there's no room for hesitation. In this life, I'm determined to see it through to the end. As public opinion heated up, Clarendon Group issued a public statement. The industry has been buzzing with discussions. Once again, I became the topic of after-dinner conversations. Everyone was waiting to see me become a laughingstock. After all, the Clarendon family had already publicly acknowledged Hiram and Ivy's relationship. That meant the engagement between our two families was inevitably going to be dissolved. But the spectacle they expected never came to pass. It's said that my father, upon seeing the Clarendon family's press conference, immediately gathered several uncles and rushed to their home. Never before had our family's dignity suffered such a blow. Mr. Clarendon, since Hiram has made his decision, we elders aren't unreasonable people. Today serves as testimony before both families. Let the engagement be dissolved then. But the friendship between our families remains. As for the East District project, we'll consider it mutually terminated, a compromise from both sides. Father's words, combining both soft and hard tactics, left Uncle Clarendon speechless. All this commotion was actually over an orphan girl. Uncle Clarendon had already scolded and even hit Hiram over this matter. But since things had come to this, he had no choice but to agree. Though superficially they claimed the friendship between the two families remained unchanged, everyone could see signs of growing estrangement. Just as the situation reached a stalemate, an unexpected person appeared. Actually, after returning home that night, I specifically messaged Torrin, when appearing before my dad, remember to dress well. Don't be fooled by his old-fashioned appearance. When it comes to judging people by appearances, he's more adept than anyone. So the rumor said that when this man appeared that day, he was elegant, tall, and poised with effortless grace. He calmly greeted the elders of both families and took his seat with refined composure. Only then did everyone gradually process the situation. This was Torrin, the eldest son of the Clarendon family, reclusive, whose mother had passed away in his childhood. And when he spoke, his words were even more astonishing. Father, I wish to marry Layla. With just a few words, he effortlessly shifted the entire situation. Uncle Clarendon had almost forgotten he even had an eldest son. Though back then, concerns about his frail health had prevented the proposed marriage alliance from materializing. But now it seems Torrin's health has improved significantly since coming of age. Father was utterly astonished. After not seeing him for years, Torrin had undergone such a remarkable transformation, possessing such an extraordinary noble bearing. He looked 100 times more pleasing to the eye than that Hiram. With just a glance exchanged between Uncle Clarendon and Father, they immediately reached an agreement. Conveniently, with both families' elders present, they consented to transfer the marriage arrangement to Torrin instead. To avoid complications arising from delay, they skipped the engagement ceremony altogether and immediately selected an auspicious wedding date on the spot. As for Hiram and Ivy, they would choose another fortunate day for their marriage. And thus, the matter was settled. The expression on Hiram's face when he learned the outcome was reportedly quite spectacular. The wedding was scheduled for 2 months later. The first move in my plan had gone so smoothly, though unexpected, the result left me thoroughly satisfied. Unexpectedly, a few days later, the person who should have appeared didn't come for the time being, while the one who shouldn't have shown up arrived uninvited. Hiram suddenly visited my home. Finally, the lovers are united. Instead of spending time with his beloved Ivy, he dares to cause trouble in my territory? Without even looking up, I directly refused to see him. But he had the audacity to stand under my room and yell at me, Layla, I think you've gone mad. A word of advice, Torrin is nothing but a sickly man. He doesn't even have decent assets. If you know what's good for you, you'd better find a way to cancel this marriage. Otherwise, you'll suffer in the future. In a cheerful mood, I couldn't be bothered to pay attention to his barking. My phone buzzed with a new message from Torrin, Madam, what are your next orders? Though they were just cold words on a screen, I could sense the flippant tone in which he had typed them. My face grew hot despite myself. No rush, the show is just about to begin. Before Hiram killed me, he actually spoke to me at length, revealing many hidden truths. But at the time, the pain consumed all my attention, leaving my memories hazy and unclear. The only thing that left a deep impression was when he said to me, if it weren't for you, for your family, Ivy and I could have grown old together. Well, this time around, without me and without my family, I'll see just how he and Ivy managed to grow old together. Inside the cafe, I watched as Torrin elegantly sampled the dessert before him. The scene seemed utterly mismatched with his usual demeanor. Lowering my head to stir my coffee, I stole a sidelong glance at him, only to be caught red-handed by the man himself. Hastily lifting my coffee for a few sips, I turned my gaze awkwardly toward the window. About the company's new charity project, assigning Hiram to conduct the field survey is fine, but taking Ivy along, isn't that a bit inappropriate? After all, she isn't very mobile. What's inappropriate about it? Though Ivy is Hiram's fiancée, wasn't it widely rumored that she was considered your family's lucky star back then? Besides, she comes from humble beginnings, physically challenged but strong-willed. Her positive, optimistic attitude toward life would make her the perfect ambassador for your family's charity campaign, wouldn't it? Perhaps when the local residents see Ivy traveling thousands of miles just to visit and comfort them, the work might proceed more smoothly. Torrin looked puzzled. This is what you called a good show? Hiram took Ivy to inspect the project, deliberately leaking the news. Opinions were divided among the crowd. Some saw it as a publicity stunt while others approved of the gesture. Smiling, I picked up my cake and took small bites. Of course, there was more to it. My wife is intelligent and virtuous. Having the fortune to enter the marriage hall with you is my blessing, Torrin suddenly said with a laugh. I looked up at him. This man's features were indeed quite handsome, especially when he smiled. The faint dimples that appeared were particularly pleasing to the eye. My gaze lingered as I studied him. The only thing was that his frame seemed a bit too slender. Noticing my stare, Torrin pushed the dessert in front of me toward my side. It's not too sweet. Try some. The eldest son of the Clarendon family, though without real authority, had never known failure in business. Frail and sickly since childhood, yet not a trace of medicinal scent clung to him. On the way back, inside the car, I was gazing out the window. Why so quiet? Torrin glanced at me. It wasn't that I didn't want to speak, but I was still mulling over Hiram's words. He's just a sickly weakling. I leaned back in the seat, crossing my arms as I looked at him. Torrin, can you handle it? Torrin slowly lowered the hand resting by the window, gazing at me calmly for a moment. Then he leaned toward me, pinching my chin. Give me a chance? Truth be told, I was actually considering giving him a chance. But considering the situation in the car at the moment, after weighing the pros and cons, it didn't seem like a good opportunity. Of course, whether Torrin could handle it or not wouldn't affect my overall plan. A week later, the show I invited Torrin to watch made its grand debut. Hiram arrived on site with his beloved fiancée. The villagers warmly welcomed them, especially since the purpose of their visit was to improve the living conditions of the local village. Little did they expect that the local area was in the midst of the rainy season, and this year's downpour was even more relentless than in previous years. The torrential rain had been pouring non-stop for a full week, with the village completely surrounded by continuous mountains. The surrounding mountains and forests, constantly washed by the rain, were already showing signs of landslides. If the rain continued unabated, it could lead to the severe disaster of a mudslide. Already, many houses at the foot of the mountain showed cracks in their outer walls from being battered by sand and stones. For safety reasons, the village chief contacted the local government, hoping to arrange for additional personnel to assist in temporarily relocating the villagers elsewhere. Hiram was concerned about Ivy, especially since she was now disabled. To ensure her safety, he sent someone to bring her back first. She stayed behind to help evacuate the villagers. But unexpectedly, Ivy drugged her with sleeping pills, and by the time she woke up, she was already in City A. How could I let you stay alone in such a dangerous place? What if your life was in danger? Ivy said tearfully, her face streaked with tears like pear blossoms in rain. It must be noted that before the field investigation, the Clarendon Group had heavily promoted this charity project to consolidate the family's positive social image. Yet now, when disaster struck, the person in charge fled at the critical moment, abandoning the villagers to their fate. Moreover, although the rainfall was indeed heavy at present. But fortunately, knowing the outcome in advance and relocating early allowed them to avoid disaster. The employees left behind at the original site, with their leaders absent, were at a loss about how to proceed with their work, leaving everyone in a state of disorganized panic. The efficiency of the relocation effort was greatly reduced. Thankfully, the fire brigade arrived in time, and the transfer was completed without major incident. Hiram's actions had chilled the hearts of the villagers, drawing widespread condemnation, which significantly increased the difficulty of future work. The Clarendon Group was labeled as cowardly and self-serving, causing its corporate image to plummet. Partner companies withdrew their investments one after another. Uncle Clarendon flew into a rage, scolding Hiram for his disgraceful behavior and moral incompetence. He immediately ordered Hiram's removal from his position in a desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Public opinion can indeed be manipulated artificially. But such things must be done covertly. Hiram only realized belatedly that his people had already been replaced in one fell swoop. His assets had either collapsed or become worthless, with losses accumulating for over a month. The current situation was far more severe, and Hiram dared not add fuel to the fire. Left with no choice, he let the rumors run wild, leaving his father to clean up the mess. In truth, in my past life, the local villagers hadn't escaped the mudslide disaster. Nearly the entire village was wiped out. It made headlines as a once-in-a-century catastrophe, leaving a deep impression on me. I deliberately led Torrin to set the project site here. If Hiram discovered it in time, it would count as a good deed. If not, this place would become his grave. After all, I've always believed in an eye for an eye. But this outcome isn't too bad either. Now it's time to make the next move. After editing the text message, I pressed send. Next step, I need to expose Ivy's fake disability. In my past life, Hiram firmly believed that Ivy loved him purely. Even when facing his father's interrogation and scolding, he insisted it was because Ivy cared too much about him. Let's see for himself how pure that love really is. Actually, making a perfectly healthy person stand up from a wheelchair isn't difficult. Just needs a little trick. After all, when faced with fear, human instincts kick in automatically. From the servants of the Clarendon family, I learned that Ivy was bitten by a dog as a child and has a strong fear of them, especially large breeds. Hiram had recently been living a life of universal condemnation. When he went out, he was pointed at by informed onlookers. At home, he endured his father's merciless scolding. Online, he was met with a chorus of denunciations. His mood had already been thoroughly frayed. For several days in a row, he had cold-shouldered Ivy. The Hiram residence had a spacious garden and lawn in its backyard. On a bright afternoon, Ivy pushed her wheelchair alone into the garden, her face wet with tears as she wept. "It was my thoughtlessness that dragged you into this mess. My love for you blinded me and drove me to act rashly. I am willing to atone for my sins. I will leave now and never see you again. Let heaven punish me as it will." Hiram, after all, was still devoted to her and was about to speak. Unexpectedly, 3 large dogs appeared out of nowhere behind him, baring their teeth as they charged toward Ivy. This frightened Ivy so much that she didn't even care about Hiram, pushing her wheelchair to flee. But the wheelchair had difficulty moving on the lawn, and just as the 3 dogs were about to pounce on her. In desperation, she stood up from the wheelchair and leapt onto Hiram, screaming, "Go away! Stay back! Help me, Hiram!" Clutching Hiram's neck for dear life, she couldn't override her body's instinctive reaction. Rumor has it that Hiram's facial expressions at that moment were a sight to behold. Unfortunately, no one was present to witness the spectacle. After this incident, the Gu family estate would often echo with Hiram's angry shouts and Ivy's crying from one corner or another. Within a few days, Hiram knelt in the study and begged his father, "Dad, I don't want to get married. Since childhood, my mother taught me that as a woman, especially one from a prestigious family, I must not be entirely ruled by love and pour out my whole heart. I must always keep a clear mind. Even when facing the one you love most, you should hold back a part of yourself." Having grown up in such a family environment, how could Hiram not know this? Perhaps it was because he was spoiled and took things for granted. Although his birth mother was a second wife, she came from a noble family herself and possessed the capability and skill to manage a household. Though Torrin was not her biological son, she never mistreated him without reason and instead raised him with careful guidance into adulthood. Until Hiram's mother was nearly 45, she unexpectedly became pregnant with Hiram, already an elderly primipara. After enduring immense hardships, she finally gave birth to him safely. From the moment Hiram was born, he naturally occupied the family's special favor. Therefore, he also naturally believed that all people and things should revolve around him. Whatever he wanted, he must obtain. What he didn't want, no one could force upon him. Old Master Goo was utterly infuriated by him, grabbing a glass from the table and hurling it at him. Hiram's mother was terrified and hurriedly pulled him out of the study. Back then, to control public opinion, we held a press conference and set the wedding date. Now, with things like this, how can the Hiram family still have the face to stand in City A? This departure of Hiram brought him right to the door of my room. At that moment, I had just given Torrin an opportunity and was so exhausted that I lay on the bed pretending to be dead, not wanting to move at all. When Torrin went to open the door, I saw a colorful shade of black on Hiram's face. Torrin really outdid himself. Seeing me about to get up, he had to pounce on me and bite my neck a couple of times, claiming it was to declare his sovereignty. So utterly childish. Clearly, these marks were seen by Hiram. He was utterly shocked, widening his eyes to look at me, then at Torrin, and it took him a long while to speak. "Layla, you too." I pulled the collar of my clothes a little tighter and looked at him with great interest. What era is it now? Who would have thought that the next second, Hiram actually became furious? "Layla, how could you be so unrestrained? Hiram, aren't you overstepping your bounds?" Torrin interrupted in time. "You and that Ivy from the orphanage who saved you have been together without any formal arrangement. What about us?" Torrin stepped forward and wrapped his arm around my waist, carefully adjusting my collar once more. "I'm not like you, getting engaged to one person today and calling it off with another tomorrow. My choice has always been steadfast. And, my dear brother, it's time you changed how you address her. Layla isn't for you to call anymore. From now on, you should call her sister-in-law." Hiram stood there with clenched fists, silent for a long time. How dull. I moved to close the door. "Layla." Hiram blocked the door with his hand, his voice choked with emotion. "Layla, Ivy deceived me. Layla, it's all because of her meddling that we ended up like this. Layla, listen to me, I regret it. Just a few days ago, I dreamed it was me marrying you." "Madam, I'm cold." Torrin deliberately called me that in front of Hiram. "What? Would you like to come in and warm your brother's bed?" Hiram stopped trying to pry open the door. I smoothly closed it behind me. I don't know what kind of shock Hiram suffered, but he actually fell seriously ill afterward. These past 2 months have flown by, and Torrin's and my wedding is about to take place. Every day has been busy with wedding preparations, leaving no time to think about anything else. On the day of the dress fitting, an uninvited guest showed up. It's rare to see Ivy walking toward me on her upright legs, practically flying with swift steps. She plopped down on her knees before me. Fortunately, I was quick-eyed and dodged to the side, avoiding her attempt to grab my wedding dress. "Don't dirty my gown." "Layla, please go see Hiram," Ivy pleaded with tearful eyes. "Hiram has been unconscious, calling your name over and over. If you go see him, maybe he'll wake up." I stared at her coldly without a word. Truth be told, I had little interest in entertaining her. "Layla, I'm begging you," she implored. I was getting irritated and about to speak up when someone beat me to it. "What's going on here? Is this a vegetable market? Letting all sorts of riffraff in?" Giselle walked out from the back with a frown. "What's wrong with security? Get this person out of here immediately." Soon, Ivy disappeared from my sight. As I recalled what she had just said, something felt off. But I quickly brushed it aside and returned to selecting wedding dresses. Finally, late at night, I realized what was wrong. Hiram was sick, yet he called out my name? Thinking back to the last time he caught me with Torrin, he mentioned dreaming that the person he married was me. Could it be? No way, right? But then again, considering I've been reborn into a second life, it's not impossible for him to remember events from our previous lifetime either. Perhaps it's better if he remembers. Facing Hiram, who knows nothing at all, would lack a certain satisfaction. Let him witness firsthand how I'll bury him in the mud pit this time around. When I proposed the alliance to Torrin, my condition was for him to successfully take over as the family's head within 3 months. The memories of what Hiram did to me and my family in our past life remain vividly clear. I'll absolutely never give him a second chance. The informant planted within the Clarendon family reports their movements to me daily, especially Hiram's. 2 days later, he regained full consciousness, with all indicators showing no abnormalities whatsoever. Upon hearing that he no longer pleaded with his father to cancel the engagement but merely requested postponing both his and Torrin's respective wedding dates, I couldn't shake off a vague sense of unease. Hiram's behavior was far too abnormal. In the past, he would have started making trouble long ago. After all, he's the type who'd stop at nothing to achieve his goals. His delaying the wedding, could it be he knew about? That 3-month agreement with Torrin was made because, on one night during the final month, Uncle Clarendon suffered a cerebral infarction and was admitted to ICU. In my past life, Torrin voluntarily relinquished his heir status, leaving Hiram without competition. Uncle Clarendon's sudden cerebral infarction was first noticed by Hiram's mother as something amiss. When he was sent to the hospital, the golden window for emergency treatment had already passed. Shortly after entering the ICU, a critical condition notice was issued. Hiram calmly and uneventfully took over the inheritance, becoming the head of the family. But in this life, there's Torrin, and there's me. How could we possibly let him succeed so smoothly? In the days that followed, I went about preparing for my wedding with Torrin as usual. Although the banquet was postponed, it didn't stop us from making preparations. The Clarendon family continued as normal. Hiram resumed his daily routine of going to and from the company. However, I hadn't heard any news about Ivy for a long time. Even though I often visited his house due to my relationship with Torrin, I never saw her again. One day, my informant suddenly lost contact. As the days drew nearer, my unease grew stronger. I decided to confess everything to Torrin, including the future stroke his father would suffer. But his reaction was unexpectedly calm. I know. You know? Could it be that you're also? Yes. I never expected Torrin to also be living a second life. You agreed to ally with me so readily now. Why did you voluntarily give up your inheritance rights in our previous life? Was it because you regretted it too? Or, were you also killed by Hiram? I was somewhat puzzled about this point. Torrin looked into my eyes and said earnestly, I gave up voluntarily because you married Hiram. Huh? What does that have to do with me getting married? I found it both funny and exasperating. My marriage shouldn't have affected his inheritance rights, right? Then, from Torrin's mouth, I heard the story from another perspective. When he was young, Torrin had once seen me. It was at my 14th birthday banquet. He fell for me at first sight, and soon after, the two families proposed a marriage alliance. At the time, Torrin was frail and sickly, so after much deliberation, his family decided to have Hiram marry me instead. From then on, Torrin began silently making sacrifices. He voluntarily gave up his inheritance rights because he wanted me to become the lady of the Clarendon family. He expanded his business ventures to earn more money, hoping to secure my stable life within the Clarendon family. Never did he imagine that I would be imprisoned and tortured to death by Hiram in the basement. When he received this news, he was abroad negotiating business deals. That very night, he bought the earliest possible flight back, only for the plane to meet with an unexpected accident. So that's why you agreed so readily when I proposed marriage to you back then. Torrin encircled me in his arms, his cool fingertips gently caressing my face as he whispered, Layla, if fate demands you to choose between me and Hiram for the sake of the family. No matter who you choose, I will strive to ensure you live a safe and smooth life. The mistress of this family will only be you, it can only ever be you. A burning warmth prickled at the corners of my eyes, leaving me momentarily at a loss for words. I simply reached out and held him tightly, pressing my cheek against the hollow of his neck, feeling the rhythm of his breath. Amidst the emotion, I also found myself wondering whether Hiram had truly returned as well. His rebirth might disrupt my plans, so I resolved to recalibrate my strategy by stepping into the game myself. Soon, that night arrived as expected. When the moon rose in the evening sky, I sent Hiram a message. "Let's meet at Riverside Park at 8 p.m. Before Ivy appeared, Hiram and I still had some beautiful memories. Although each of our families would host birthday banquets every year, we always managed to sneak out together. There was a wishing fountain in the park where we would devoutly toss coins and make our wishes. The emotions of youth were always intense and straightforward. Whatever was in our hearts, we longed to share with each other. My wishes always seemed to come true not long after. As we grew older and learned to read people's expressions, I stopped voicing them aloud. But Hiram could always uncover my thoughts and preferences from the people around me. When I arrived at the park, he was already there. With just one glance, I knew Hiram had returned. The reckless Hiram of our youth and the Hiram who had spent 5 years as the head of his family had completely different looks in their eyes. He casually sat on the stone bench by the wishing fountain and, seeing me approach, gestured for me to sit on the other side. "I remember one year on your birthday, we sneaked out to the wishing fountain, but in our hurry, we forgot to bring any coins." Hiram turned to look at me. "You were so upset you started crying back then. I had to coax you, promising that your wish would still come true even without tossing a coin, before you finally stopped crying." I smiled faintly. "Really? I can barely remember that now. So the moment you came back, you planned to stay away from me, is that it? Otherwise?" I shot him a glance and said, "Wait to be locked in the basement by you again and tortured to death?" Hiram raised an eyebrow and whispered, "Layla, I wronged you. I thought you deliberately set fire to burn down the orphanage. After you died, I saw a very much alive Ivy at the cemetery. Only then did I realize she had an unusual relationship with one of the servants at home. Later, after investigating her previous fake death plan, I granted her wish and let her perish in the fire. Layla, I've avenged you in a way." I wasn't particularly keen on listening. Back then, no matter how much I explained, it was futile, and now this outcome no longer mattered. What should or shouldn't have been done, he had already done it all. I looked coldly at Hiram. "Even if Ivy died saving you back then, just a little investigation would have shown it had nothing to do with me. Yet because of a single well-intentioned piece of advice I gave, you destroyed my family. Hiram, you never trusted me from the start. Ivy died because of you too, and now you claim to be avenging me? What utter nonsense." I thought. "Enough, I don't want to hear it." I interrupted him impatiently. The night was slightly chilly, the only sound in the air being the whisper of wind through fallen leaves. After a moment of silence, Hiram suddenly laughed, his dark eyes fixed on me. "I know where the problem lies. Layla, don't be angry anymore, I've already vented your anger for you. I think something must have happened to Ivy. But right now, I can't find her hiding place. Could it be the same as in my previous life?" I remained composed and deliberately mocked Hiram. "On my behalf? Stop using the pretense of helping me to disgust me. You're just finding a high-sounding excuse for yourself. Ivy was the one you insisted on marrying no matter what. Hiram, whatever issues you and Ivy have, that's between the two of you. Don't come bothering me again." As I spoke, I observed Hiram's expression. Under the streetlight by the stone bench, only his calm face was reflected. I crossed my arms and leaned back against the bench, waiting for his response. If my suspicions are correct, perhaps Ivy is currently locked in his basement. Just like I was back then. Hiram then smiled again, uttering the most vicious madness in the calmest tone. "You know, I despise being lied to more than anything in this life. Lost her legs to save me? If that's the case, I'll make it a reality. Pity you can't witness it firsthand." I laughed out loud. Who was the real mad one here? Why can't I see it? Hiram. Your basement, I know it better than you do, don't I? Layla, sometimes being too clever backfires. Hiram glanced at his watch and stood up. Let's go, my dear wife. 9:36 p.m. Isn't this the exact moment you've been waiting for? 9:36 p.m., the time his father was sent to the ICU in my past life. I remained seated, showing no intention of moving. Layla, what I did to your family in my past life, I can do again in this one. Don't think bringing along that useless Torrent changes anything. Leave now, unless you want me to ask twice. Hiram forcibly pulled me to my feet and dragged me into his car, speeding straight to his estate. Just as expected, the house was brightly lit with all the clan elders whispering among themselves in the grand hall. The moment we entered, a lawyer-looking man rushed to Hiram's side and murmured in his ear. Torrent arrived slightly later than us, seemingly straight from the hospital. I caught the scent of disinfectant as he brushed past. His gaze flickered to me briefly before lowering. My eye swept across the packed hall, then to the ticking clock on the wall. Perfect timing. With all key players present, the show was ready to begin. Hiram clapped his hands to signal for everyone to quiet down. Uncles and elders, you must already be aware of my father's tragic passing. Despite the grief in our hearts, the vast family business cannot go a day without a successor. He gestured for the lawyer to approach. The lawyer then retrieved a brown paper file from his briefcase. Hiram opened it publicly and took out the documents inside. This is the will that my father personally drafted while he was still alive. Since ancient times, it has been customary for a son to inherit his father's legacy. I believe my father had the foresight to prepare for the future and entrusted this confidential document to me in advance. All the uncles present here today are my witnesses. From this day forward, I will assume control as the head of the family. I stared at him in disbelief. I hadn't expected him to move so swiftly during these days of lying low. Hiram pulled me over his shoulder in one sweeping motion. By the way, let me introduce everyone to Layla, who will become my wife, the love of my life with whom I'll walk hand in hand for the rest of our days. He lowered his head and whispered in my ear, Layla, in this lifetime, I swear I'll make you the happiest, most carefree woman alive. My gaze shifted between the triumphant Hiram before me and the silent Torrent sitting nearby. Was the ending truly decided? It didn't seem so certain to me. At that moment, a vigorous voice rang out behind Hiram, ungrateful son. Uncle Clarendon slowly walked in with his cane and said, Who said I was dead? Uncle Clarendon was so furious he lost his composure. He strode forward and kicked Hiram, exclaiming in a rage, The will I drafted while alive? How dare you curse me to death? I'll beat you to death today. Hiram stared in disbelief at the person standing before him. In his eyes, he was certain that I would do everything to obstruct him tonight, ensuring Torrent's smooth succession. So when I asked him out to meet, he thought I was using a diversionary tactic. But as always, he remained arrogantly self-assured. For this past month since my rebirth, believing I already knew the outcome, I had meticulously prepared every contingency. Thus, he calmly went to the meeting. He would never consider a second possibility. Because he too was eagerly awaiting this night, the day he would regain control of the family. But how could I let things go his way? From the very beginning, my plan was only to drive a wedge between Hiram and his father, to sow discord between them. Hiram was too focused on watching me, overlooking Torrent who had also been reborn. Perhaps we should thank the fact that Torrent posed no threat to Hiram in the previous life, which was why Hiram never paid attention to his actions. Since we knew Uncle Clarendon would be critically ill this evening, why not take precautions in advance? Shortly after Torrent returned, he took his father to the hospital for a thorough checkup. As expected, some early signs were detected. Fortunately, it was caught in the initial stage, and timely treatment led to a good recovery. Hiram had only been back for a month. How could he know that his father had been going for regular checkups and follow-ups since half a year ago? His health is much better than in the previous life, and living past 90 shouldn't be a problem. I never intended to go for the kill from the start, but now it seems Hiram has to die. As I suspected, Ivy was hidden by Hiram in the basement. I looked at Hiram and slowly took out the listening device from behind my ear. With a faint smile, I gestured toward him. When Torrent found Ivy, she was already on the verge of death. The basement was filled with the pungent smell of blood. Hiram had brutally broken Ivy's legs and severed the tendons in her wrists. By the time she was sent to the hospital, resuscitation efforts failed, and she was pronounced dead. The cause of death was excessive blood loss. The conversation between Hiram and me in the park had already been simultaneously transmitted to Torin. He submitted this as evidence to the police station. The officers arrived before we did, and while Hiram was proudly proclaiming his deeds, they quietly conducted a scene investigation in the basement. Torin did go to the hospital. He returned home only after confirming Ivy's death there. Before Hiram could even get up from the ground, he was promptly pinned down by the police who arrived shortly after. The crowd panicked and scattered in all directions, terrified of being implicated. Hiram, you have been verified as connected to a homicide case and are formally identified as a suspect. You're coming with us. Soon, bloodstains were detected on Hiram's shoe soles, and the DNA matched Ivy's. Hiram's crime of intentional homicide was proven with irrefutable evidence, and he was sentenced to death, to be carried out in a week. In the end, Ivy died because of him, and he would perish because of her. You two truly were a perfect match. The day before the execution, I went to visit him in prison. Hiram had lost his former radiance, with a scruffy beard and a noticeably gaunt face. He wore thin prison garb, his hands and feet shackled, with 2 prison guards constantly watching over him. He didn't have to end up in such a wretched state. But all of this was his own doing. As soon as he sat down, he eagerly picked up the phone. Layla, you still refuse to forgive me even now. I couldn't help but laugh. That's right, I'll never forgive you. You'll find no peace even in death. Hiram, this is what you owe me. May you smoothly descend to the 18th level of hell after tomorrow. Hiram suddenly became agitated. Layla, I don't believe this. If we could start over once, there must be a second chance. Wait for me. Next time I will definitely succeed. I watched as Hiram was restrained by 2 prison guards, then stood up to leave. Torin was waiting outside for me. Seeing me come out, he stepped forward and took my hand. Your hands are so cold, he said while tucking my hands into his coat pocket. Maybe because sunlight can't get in there, so it's heavy with energy? I made up a random excuse. Torin nodded. I'll mention it to their supervisor later and have someone draw a sun in every room inside. So they can look at the sun and feel warm? I gave Torin a playful glare, to which he responded with a radiant smile. Torin and I held our wedding as scheduled. The Clarendon family is still under the leadership of Uncle Clarendon. But Torin doesn't seem to care much about it, as if he's not particularly enthusiastic about these matters. Right now, he's only focused on quickly going on our honeymoon with me, even staying up 2 nights in a row to plan the itinerary. Half a year later, when I became pregnant, he devoted himself entirely to me. He declined all social engagements he could avoid, and for those he couldn't, he dragged his father along to attend. He would often sneak away midway, calling it fainting to the east while attacking in the west. Watching him now, earnestly applying anti-stretch mark oil to my belly with such devotion, I couldn't help but roll my eyes. I must have been blind before to have praised him for being ambitious. After 10 months of pregnancy, the baby was born smoothly, a daughter. Torin was overjoyed, personally handling everything from diaper changes to preparing formula. When the child turned 1, the Clarendon family hosted a grand first birthday banquet, inviting numerous friends and relatives. He carried his daughter around proudly showing her off to everyone. The following year, their daughter began babbling her first words. Every morning upon waking, one could hear him speaking to her in a sweet, exaggerated tone without pause. Baby drink milk, baby made a stinky, so clever baby go sleep sleep. In the 3rd year, the child could walk and talk. The house was filled with laughter and joy every day, becoming much livelier. My parents, under the pretense of visiting their granddaughter, often came to stay at the Clarendon family's home for short periods. I was afraid that Torin's family would worry about not having an heir, so I suggested having a second child. Torin, however, said, "It's fine, a daughter is just as good. Don't worry, Dad and the others are very open-minded." When the child turned 5, we sent her to kindergarten. On the first day of enrollment, she didn't cry or fuss much, quietly carrying her little backpack and heading off. Torin was the one who got upset instead. Isn't 5 years old too early for kindergarten? I sighed and looked skyward. When kindergarten let out, Torin was always the first one there. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Torin's face covered in Hello Kitty stickers, with his hair tied up in a little bun. Clearly my daughter's handiwork. I smiled, realizing happiness could be so simple. Then I called out to them, "Wash up, dinner's ready."